of you guys are making your cars slower and you don't even know it. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping in. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button right now and hit that little bell notification as well. You don't want to miss out. I do 3 videos every single week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And I got an interesting one for you because this is not necessarily a mistake, but this is something that a lot of us don't even take into consideration as we try to increase the performance of our Q50s and 60s and push the limits of the car and make it faster, improve our 60-foot time, improve our 0 to 60 time, improve our quarter-mile time, etc., etc. But we keep putting these parts on it, thinking that it looks cool, and it's actually slowing the car down. Not blaming you. I did the same thing. It's something that I've noticed, particularly over the last year or so, as I do different things to my Q50. So it's a big topic. It's an important one, something we need to take into consideration, especially if you're trying to go faster. We all want our cars to look cool, right? That's what we're doing. We're enthusiasts. That's why we're involved in this hobby. So what are some of the things that we do right away? Of course, we add a chin spoiler, whether or not chin spoiler, front splitter, some people refer to it as, whether it's you have a sport Q50 or a non-sport Q50, adding that front splitter makes the car look a lot more aggressive, gives it more of a lower profile, just kind of adds a little bit of attitude, I guess you could say, to the front end. And of course, what else do we do? On the back end, we add high kick duckbill spoilers, right? In my opinion, the Q50 sort of it's not very well balanced from the factory in terms of its aesthetic. And I refer to this as weight of a vehicle. So the front end of the car is really, really long. The back end is a little bit stubby, and it's a little bit kind of, it's just lacking in design in the rear end, in my opinion, from a profile. So adding that spoiler adds a little bit of weight to the rear end. A rear diffuser goes a long way in making the back end look a lot more sleek, a lot more aggressive, a lot more stylish, I guess you could say. But the problem is that you add these pieces of aero and it actually slows the car down. We go beyond these pieces that I've already listed, and we're doing side splitters, which makes the car look a lot lower. Again, a lot more sleek, more aggressive. We add M-style mirrors. It's got the little fins on it. Of course, they're sleek. It's reminiscent of the BMW M series cars. It looks fantastic, but it's making your car slower. And this is even more important to take into consideration if you're in a vehicle that's not making a ton of power. The VQ37, for example, a lot of us are making 340, 340, maybe 350 horsepower. So when you're adding these pieces of aero, it has a much larger impact in terms of its overall performance. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, race cars have aero, race cars have really aggressive aero. How is it supposed to slow the car down? It does. It does. Think about this theoretically. What is the purpose of aero? Right? What's the purpose of a big wing on a race car or the big front splitters? It's to create downforce. It's to push the car down on the ground to maintain traction and stabilization at higher speeds, particularly around corners. Now, when you're in a super high performance, high horsepower car, you may not experience it as much. Your 0 to 60 times are going to be really fast. Your quarter-mile times are going to be really fast. But if you're in a 335, 340 horsepower Q50 that weighs almost 4,000 pounds, now you put a big duckbill spoiler on a front splitter and side splitters, you're gonna feel it. And I'm not saying this just theoretically, I experienced this myself. Some of the best 0 to 60 times that I've run in my Q50, sub 5 seconds. The best one I ran 4.84 seconds, something like that. I had essentially no aero on the car. I had no front splitter, and I had just the OEM style rear spoiler. So there was really no flip up. It was just kind of straight off the rear deck lid. If I have a picture, I'll put it up here. The car was really sleek. It was essentially factory in terms of its look. I'm not even sure. I had the heavy drag, what is it? The heavy drag wheels and not even good tires. And I got the car to hook somehow, and nice cool temperatures, and we ran a 4.84 0 to 60. That's pretty impressive. Then I started adding aero. Now, I actually ended up putting lighter wheels on the car. These 4-star F14s are like 23 pounds a piece, something like that, so significantly lighter than the drag wheels I had on before. But I put the front splitter on. I put the side splitters on. I had the carbon fiber rear diffuser. Although it doesn't weigh that much, it's messing with how the air flows on the underside of the car and exits the rear. And I put that high kick duckbill spoiler on. One of my favorite aesthetic modifications on this car. I think it's a modification. It's a part that the Q50 needs. Again, just that short stubby rear end of this car, it needs sort of an aggressive spoiler, in my opinion, in terms of aesthetics. However, I noticed right away my 60-foot times increased and my 0 to 60 times increased. I went from consistently running 4.9 seconds 0 to 60, sub 5 seconds 0 to 60s, to 5.3, 5.4 0 to 60. Some of that had to do with traction, and this was after a tune, by the way. So the car was making the most horsepower and the most torque that it's made, 335-ish horsepower, 278, almost 280 foot-pounds of torque. So even when I was getting grip or I was running traction control, of course that cuts a little bit of timing or cuts a little bit of power, but 5.4 seconds 0 to 60 is terrible. I was eventually able to get it down to 5.2s. I think I did hit a couple 5.05s, something like that. But it's a good quarter of a second slower, 0 to 60, even in similar conditions, even making the same amount of horsepower. Just adding that splitter and that duckbill spoiler actually makes a difference. There's some other things that you can do to your Q50 that a lot of people do that makes it slower still. And I'm going to talk about that in a video coming up. So you guys want to stick around. If you're not subscribed, please do. But I think this is an important topic too. So the point is that we add aero to make our cars look better, and it does. It goes a long way in making the Q50 look better. But we have to realize that we're actually cutting its performance. At least 0 to 60s, at least straight lines. Now, if you take your car to the track, there's a certain argument to be made, running a road course or autocross, that a high kick duckbill spoiler and front splitters may benefit this car. So I've actually seen this on a number of occasions, and there's videos all over the place. You guys can check them out, where a car will show up to a track day, they run a bunch of laps, and they feel like the car is holding them back a little bit, so they actually pull the wing off, and they might be able to increase their overall top speed on the straightaway by a couple mile per hour, for example, or maybe they're able to cut a couple of tenths or maybe a full second off of a lap time just because they pulled that aero off. And now it might be sacrificing a little bit of stability in some corners, but they're able to carry speed around the track a little bit more effectively. So there's other circumstances where they have to put the wing back on because they're losing control in the corners. There's a Top Speed episode that comes to mind. I think, gosh, I don't remember what it was, but they pulled the wing off and Jeremy Clarkson took the car off the track, and it was like a $250,000 car or something like that. But what was that? It was like a Pagani or something, I think. Pagani Huayra, I'd have to check it out. Anyway, this topic comes up often in talking about C6 Corvettes. Between the base and the Grand Sport. The Grand Sport looks a lot more aggressive. It's got the wide body kit from the factory. It's got a little more aggressive spoiler, a little lower to the front end, different suspension, of course, bigger wheels and wider tires, but having the same amount of horsepower as the base Corvette is actually faster in a straight line. Now the Grand Sport might carry around a track better with bigger brakes and a little bit better sort of track-inspired stance, but that wide body kit and the more aggressive aero on that car actually slows it down 0 to 60 in a quarter mile. So a lot of people will talk about that, saying the Grand Sport looks cool, but the base Corvette, C6 Corvette, is actually faster. So aero plays a major role even in factory cars. You wouldn't think like adding just a little spoiler to a Q50 or a front splitter can slow it down all that much, but it does. I've experienced it. We see it in other cars, other makes and models. This is it's something very interesting to keep in consideration when you're spending money and you're taking your time and putting in a lot of effort to try to maximize their performance for the car. A lot of us think about horsepower, top speeds, and things like that. But then, of course, we want it to look cool, so we put these other components on, but it's actually counterproductive. So just keep in mind, think about what you're actually trying to get out of your car. If you're doing a road course, maybe you want some aero. If you're just doing straight line performance stuff like daily Q50, for example, you don't want a big old spoiler on there and a bunch of splitters and canards and all of that stuff. You don't see him with the big wing on the back end of that Q50 putting down the times that he's able to put down. So keep those things in mind as you go forward and you continue to modify your Q50 or any vehicle for that matter, that although they're little pieces of plastic that you might be putting on your car, they are actually having an impact, and it might be a negative one. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I always like your guys' feedback. I appreciate you watching. Some interesting stuff coming up on the channel, possibly some giveaways that you might be interested in. So hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate it very, very much. We'll see you in the next one.